And just want to say welcome to Dale McClenning, who stopped in while JD was reading. It's good to see you here, Dale.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay.
Good. Would you like to just give a brief introduction?
Okay. I am in Indianapolis, Indiana. There's actually more than one Indianapolis, in case any of you are wondering. Not nearly as famous, though. I have two books with brain lag, Innocent Earth and Divided Earth, and soon to be the third, which I found out recently some people I know are waiting for the third to come out before they start reading any of them, which I find weird, but that's okay. Um, I'm trying to write hard science fiction, as it's called. Um, but I had to take a break and write a fantasy science fiction at the moment. So, contradict myself as I say. I am an engineer by training. Um, I have a wife, two kids, one granddaughter. Um, don't know what else you want to know about me.
That's great, thank you. And if you go to brain-lag.com, as you can see at the top of your screen there, we just had the cover reveal for Rebel Earth, which is releasing in January. So be sure to check that out. Uh,
I missed it.
yeah, so just go to the website or Brain Lag social media. And now I know, Mike, you have somewhere to be later, so how about you give us a reading from Rose?
Sounds good. Thanks. So, a little bit of background. Katja Carter is a woman who is recovering from a heart transplant, and she's at home alone, going through her recovery, and the cable keeps going out. So, she crawled back into her sofa nest and pulled the blankets around her. She put her hand to her chest scar, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. She turned on the TV, and the signal was once again out. Katja moaned lightly and considered her options. It was too early to go to bed, and she didn't think she could concentrate on a book. If the TV was out, then so was the internet. Besides, the internet outrage machine was only liable to angry up the blood. She sighed, crawled out of her nest, put her shoes on, and went to the back door. A flashlight and
Oh dear, we seem to have a bit of
the cold
lag.
at night. The rain pattered on the umbrella, and mud squished under her shoes as she crossed the backyard to the utility pole where the cable came in. Once again, the rusted out connector had come undone. The too small piece of duct tape that had studiously held it together for several years was a vaguely sticky lump of gray goo, crisscrossed with soaking wet threads. She raised her shoulder to hold the umbrella against her neck, squeezed the flashlight under her arm, and pulled the stray cable to the connector. They held together hesitantly for a moment before popping apart. Katja bent down and searched the unkempt garden. Pulled the cable behind one of the slats in the privacy fence, stretched the connector end to the same spot, pushed them together, and set them down on a horizontal mid-fence beam. She set the rock on top. It held. "Look at me being an expert electrician," she said. She turned around to head back inside, but found her way blocked by a person. Under the sound of the rain, the person had gotten nearly within touching distance of Katja without being heard. It was the girl she thought she had seen watching her earlier. Her white dress was caked in mud, ground in so hard that the rain wasn't helping. Her hair was the same, knotted and was deathly white. Her bare feet had sucked into the muck of the garden. Her toes turned inwards. Her toes turned inwards. One leg turned too far to one side. Her lips were black, as were her empty eye sockets, which, despite the lack of eyes, looked directly at Katja. The two top buttons on her dress were undone, and she had a long tear down the front, revealing a scar that matched Katja's. She took a shaky, lurching step forwards as she spoke. Her voice was low and gravelly as she pointed a thin, bony finger at Katja. "You have my heart," she said. Katja screamed, dropped the flashlight, and swung hard at the girl with the umbrella in both hands. It connected solidly against the side of her head, and her neck bent sideways and down, causing her head to dangle in a way that no head should. She made incoherent croaking sounds as her head lolled horribly to the side. Katja hit her again, but the umbrella had bent in two from the first strike. She dropped it and ran for the back door. As she was searching for the handle, the girl appeared suddenly in front of it, her head still dangling to the side. She reached to Katya with both hands. Guttural gurgling sounds rose up from her throat. Katya screamed again, jumped back, turned to the right, and ran up the alley for the front door. Not that it would help, since her key was inside the house, along with her phone. She didn't get far enough to worry about that, though, as the pale specter appeared in front of her again. Katya froze, the girl's neck slowly twisted back into place. Katya could hear the sickening sound of bones crunching against each other as the head repositioned itself. It opened its mouth and dry, choking sounds came out. Katya turned to run back down the alley, but the thing appeared before her once again. Katya dropped to her knees, her hand to her chest. She moaned and began to cry. "Why would you do that to me?" said the girl. "I'm sorry," said Katya through the tears and the rain, not daring to make eye contact with the hideous holes in her attacker's face. I didn't know it was your heart. The doctors gave it to me." "But why would you hit me with your umbrella?" said the girl. "Why did you break my neck?" "Please don't kill me," said Katya, still looking at the ground and crying. I didn't know it was yours. Don't kill me, please." The girl frowned and straightened up a bit. "Why would I want to kill you?" Katya, confused, looked up at the girl. To get your heart back?" "Why would I want my heart back? I don't need it anymore." Katya blinked up at the girl and squinted, rain falling into her eyes. Then why are you here?" The girl began. She choked and gagged like she was pulling something up her throat from deep inside her. She opened her mouth, and a clod of mud and stones dropped out onto the alleyway ground. She coughed and drooled out more mud. When she spoke again, her voice was considerably less aggressive sounding. "I just wanted to meet you," she said.
Thank you. I love that introduction. If you'd
Thanks.
like, Mike, we do have a little bit of extra time for this reading. If you have another about 5 minute section that you'd like to read.
Is there a section you would like to hear? What's your favorite section?
How about when they're talking about the girl's powers after Katya's husband gets home? I hope you caught that. It looks like we had a little bit of lag. All right, can you hear me now?
Oh, there. All right, I think it's working now. So, sorry, which part?
How about when Katya and her husband Vijay are talking about trying to discern the girl's powers?
Oh, yeah. Okay, hang on.
Once again, this is Rose by Mike Bryant.
Okay, so Vijay, of course, thought it was fake at first and didn't believe it, but she sort of did the thing where she disappears and reappears a few times and freaked him out. And so then he realizes that no, it's not a joke. And so Vijay stared at Katya open mouth for a moment and then turned to the girl. "So, you're dead?" "Yes." "Undead," said Katya, "right?" The girl shrugged. "I guess. And this is not a joke." "No," said Katya. "And you don't know how you died." "Right," said the girl, "or who you were." "And you can't remember anything?" "Not really," she said. "I mean, I can speak, obviously, so I remember how to do that, and I can walk, and I can remember a few things like some celebrities. Like, I might not be able to think of them right now, but Katya mentioned Jason Momoa, and I remembered him immediately, but I just couldn't tell you what he was in." "She remembers Jason Momoa," Katya said, putting on a husky voice and wagging her eyebrows saucily. "You all remember Jason Momoa," said Vijay, rolling his eyes. "But I don't do automatic things like breathing or circulating blood. I guess I don't need to anymore." "So what's the first thing you remember?" Vijay said. "Being cold and confined." "You were confined?" "Well, I was buried," she said. "Did you know the weight of dirt makes coffins collapse?" "I did not," said Vijay, attempting and failing not to let his inner reaction show on his face. "I did," said Katya. "I saw it in Mythbusters." "Mythbusters," said the girl. "Guy with the big mustache, right? And the other guy. You remember it?" "Maybe. Was there an exploding cement truck?" "Yes." "Okay, so there's a new thing I remember." "All right, so you remember Mythbusters and being in a collapsed coffin," Vijay said. "Yeah, of course, I had no idea where I was," she said. "I just had an overwhelming desire to get out." And just going to skip along a little bit. "So it seems like I can't teleport or whatever with anything I wasn't buried with," she said, which basically means my dress and that's it. Do you have other powers?" Vijay asked. "Powers?" Katya said. "Really? Well, what do you call them?" Vijay said. I don't know, not powers. That's some comic book shit. Well, she's undead. She can blink around all over the place. Those sound like powers to me, said VJ. It just sounds weird, Katja said. I should probably add it to the wall, though, when she grabs some sticky notes. She has a sticky note wall of like a mind map. Are you remembering something? No, I just assume. I mean, who wouldn't want superpowers? That's a valid point, Katja said, nodding. They're kind of like the butter chicken of the supernatural. She added superpowers as a heading on the sticky note and put it on the wall. Under that, she put blink travel. Can you fly? VJ asked. I don't think so. Move faster than a speeding bullet? Not really, but I think the blink thing kind of covers that. Can you spin a web? Any size? She made the web shooting motion with her wrist, but nothing happened. Nope. Heat vision? She stared at a blank spot on the wall and concentrated. Nothing combusted. Nope. What about like super hearing or fire breath or clairvoyance? No, none of that, she said. Just the blinking thing, I think, and the ability to see without eyes. Yeah, that one's pretty cool, I guess. And the heart-finding thing, said Katja. Cardiovascular geopositioning, said the girl. Is that a thing? It is now, she said. That's a good one, Katja said, adding it under superpowers. Can you walk on water? VJ asked. She considered that for a moment and said, I don't know. I think I remember a bridge on my walk, but no actual water. There might have been a creek, but I'm not sure. 5 minutes later, they were in the washroom, filling a tub with water. That's probably enough, said the girl. I only need an inch or so. Okay, said Katja, turning off the water. The girl stepped into the bath and failed to not sink. Nope, she said. I guess I'll leave that one there.
Thank you. I love that exchange. There's a lot of great conversation between the three of them in that book. So, once again, that was Rose by Mike Bryant. All right, moving on. Simon, would you like to give us your reading?
Okay, so yeah, again, I'm reading from my upcoming book, Shadows of Slavery. It is a sci-fi fantasy, I suppose is the best term for it. And we're going to just start right sort of in the middle of things. For context, what's happened here is that there was a negotiation going on this space station, which has been interrupted by someone boarding and not being very friendly about it. Okay. The guard saluted. Sir, I'll take point. Alice held up her hand. No, I'll do it. Sergeant Garfield, ma'am. Alice shot him a warning look, tempered by a slight smile. Don't ever call me ma'am, Sergeant. I'll go first, please. Ark was impressed by her confidence, but he worried it might be misplaced. Do you have a gun? Alice wrinkled her nose with distaste. Please, I'm a Rashani. Guns are beneath me. She reached into her robes and produced a small silver sphere. Come on, don't pretend you don't know what a Lucidil is. This is all we'll need. Osterley sighed, apparently resigned to her presence. Right, Sergeant Garfield, guard our rear. Let's go. Ark had developed an aversion to taking orders since he'd achieved his freedom, but Osterley's tone was compelling, no doubt part of his time in the military. The two diplomats placed themselves between Alice and Garfield, following the Rashani into the much less secure space of the hallways. Alice was cautious, glancing down every hall before beckoning the others to follow. The station personnel were nowhere to be found, probably already gone to the hangar. The group moved swiftly, the wail of the alarm masking any racket they might have made. Ark glanced over his shoulder, almost obsessively, expecting someone to sneak up on them at any moment. He felt tense, but not scared. The gladiator pits had beaten true fear out of him years ago, and he gained awareness of violence in its place. He had no experience at a gunfight anyway, and what remained of his warrior's instinct was telling him he was out of his element. Alice breathed in sharply and came to a halt ahead of them. Get down! Ark heeded her advice, dropping low to the floor without asking why. Osterley had done the same, while Garfield had gone into a crouch, rifle at the ready. Ark looked ahead, catching a glimpse of the enemy a moment before they opened fire. They were swathed in dark green armor with a tinge of sickly brown, but bore no emblems of allegiance, while their helms concealed their faces behind a mirrored visor. They were tall as well, almost a third more than the average human height, and they had to bend their heads forward to keep from scraping their helmets against the ceiling. Their arms and legs were of equal proportion, a distinct trait of the Zulkar, one of the older Empire races. There were two of them, each carrying unusually long rifles, which they hefted at the sound of Alice's voice. In the same moment, Ark realized Alice hadn't taken her own advice. She remained standing in the middle of the hall, staring down the Zulkar even as they opened fire. He expected to see the woman riddled with holes, and it took all his courage not to look away. Just as well, he wouldn't have believed what happened next if he hadn't seen it himself. Alice held the silver ball in her palm, lifting it before her as the Zulkar's barrels flashed. With a swift movement of her hand, the metal sphere stretched, flattening out into a wide circular plate that absorbed the impact of the rifle needles, leaving them to fall impotently at her feet. She moved quickly, hefting the plate and throwing it across the hall before the Zulkar or Ark had fully registered what had happened. It spun through the air without so much as a wobble, moving with purposeful precision towards the rifleman. The Zulkar on the right let out a cry of surprise, cut short when the disc clipped the side of his long neck and sliced through the armor there as though it had been mere cloth. He toppled over, clutching at his neck as gouts of violet blood spilled free. The other Zulkar pressed himself against the wall, head swiveling as the disc flew past. A series of loud bangs left Ark's ears ringing as Sergeant Garfield opened fire. The remaining Zulkar flinched, dropping to his knee, but there were no signs of a serious injury. The long neck twisted to face them, and he spat a curse in their direction. Alice seemed to be in a trance, barely sparing the surviving Zulkar a glance. The disc struck the wall at the far end of the hall and clattered to the floor. The Roshani reached out as if beckoning it, and the disc collapsed into a silver lump before reforming into its familiar spherical shape. With a flick of her wrist, the ball came rolling back towards her as if pulled by a string. Ark goggled at what he was seeing, his mind reeling in an attempt to rationalize it. He hadn't entirely believed the things Alice had told him before, and he dismissed the rumors of Roshani magic as some strange superstition. That Lucidol was something else, though, a weapon more versatile than he could have imagined, and all seemingly controlled by Alice's mind alone. The Zulkar stood, stepping between Alice and the Lucidol. Garfield had expended his clip to no effect and let out a warning cry. Ark found himself rising to his feet, thinking he could push Alice out of harm's way. It would put him in the line of fire, but he wasn't really thinking of his own safety in that moment. But the Zulkar did not fire. He threw his rifle to the ground and lifted his hands into the air. His arms were too long to extend fully upward, and they bent awkwardly as he pressed his palms against the ceiling. For the first time, Alice seemed to notice the tall figure standing in front of her. Surprise was on her face, and the Lucidol slowed to a crawl. The Zulkar looked down at her and grunted, "I surrender. Take weapon." His kinship comment was stilted, with each syllable coming out harshly on his tongue. Even with the helmet muffling the voice, Ark recognized the accent. Middle-class Imperial. This man was no pirate. He might even be a lower noble. Ark stepped forward, reaching down to take the Zulkar's rifle. At a glance, it was a rapid-fire needle rifle, as he'd suspected, but its design was unlike anything he'd seen, with a wider barrel and longer stock. If they survived this experience, someone in the kinship would want to look at this. "Slave!" the Zulkar shouted, bringing Ark to a stop. "Not you! Surrender to her! Keep honor!" Though he remained with his hands upheld, the Zulkar radiated hostility. Ark clenched his fists and left the rifle on the floor, facing the Zulkar. An arrogant bastard, even when he'd lost. How do you know who Ark was? The Empire wouldn't have let any of his broadcasts get across the Serpent's head, for fear of inciting slaves to riot. He considered taking the rifle anyway, just to spite this Imperial snob and his honor, but a gentle hand fell on his arm. "It's all right, I can do it," Alice assured him. Ark stepped away, hoping the Zulkar saw he carried just as much hate. Alice bent to pick the rifle off the floor. She gave it a distasteful sneer, then passed it into Ark's hands. So long as she was the one to accept the weapon, the Zulkar's honor was intact. She exchanged a look with the Zulkar, and the Imperial nodded, folding his arms behind his back, kneeling. "I accept your surrender," Alice said, stepping closer to touch the Zulkar's mirrored visor. "Now you're going to tell me who you are." The Zulkars are... that's I'm going to stop right there, actually.
All right. Thank you very much. And that was from Shadows of Slavery by Simon A.G. Spencer. That is coming in February.